This week on GamePron News, it's a battle of the consoles as both Microsoft and Sony release some sales numbers for their newest peripherals, but which one's smudging the details? We found information on just how Apple is upsetting gamers through a simple change to their terms of service, how the US Air Force uses 1,760 PS3s, and just what the Australian government has discovered when it comes to video games and violence. Hi, I'm Jessica Citizen. Microsoft proudly told us this week that they have sold more than 2.5 million Kinect units in the mere 25 days since launch. The company thanks strong demand over the Black Friday weekend and expect the upcoming holiday sales to help out even further. They say they are on pace to reach their target of 5 million units sold by the end of the year. Kinect is currently available in 60,000 retailers in 38 different countries, and a bit of maths suggests consumers are buying more than 100,000 units per day. Unfortunately, that's not quite the case for Sony's equivalent controller, Move. Original reports from the hardware giant released this week stated that they had sold 4.1 million units in the first 2 months of release. That's no mean feat, but it's also not true. Those 4.1 million units have been shipped to retailers, not sold, a subtle but distinct difference. The actual sales figures are closer to 2.5 million, the same as Microsoft, but taking several months longer to get there. Perhaps the reason the Move is a bit sluggish is because nobody's really publicised whether or not you can hack it to do cool stuff. Every few days, another clever sod comes up with another amazing way of using Kinect, so Sony are lagging somewhere behind, wondering what went wrong. This week, someone has actually discovered a way to use Kinect to create optical camouflage. The concept should be familiar to James Bond fans or anyone who's ever played Metal Gear Solid. Personally, I just like the fact it makes you look like a predator in stealth mode, all set up to take an alien or two. A Japanese coder who uses the name Art and Mobile has kept pretty quiet on just how he managed the technological feat, but explains it does use open frameworks to exploit the infrared sensing peripheral. Basically speaking, the camera will track your movement and position, but it turns your image nearly transparent except for a shimmering border. We're not sure if that's a still image of the background or if that's also being picked up by the hardware, but either way it's pretty impressive stuff and we can't wait to see how it might be used in future. One thing we won't have to wait for, though, is the latest in Peter's sporadic series of video game parodies. People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals has now targeted indie darling Super Meat Boy, which somehow found itself transformed into Super Tofu Boy, and posted on the Peter website. Super Tofu Boy must save his girlfriend Bandage Girl from the evil Meat Boy, of course. The parody game draws heavily on the recently released indie version with similarly styled gameplay, characters, art direction and general aesthetic. But it's not exactly subtle in its approach, bombarding gamers with handy tips like vegetarians make better lovers, tofu doesn't stream when you cut it, and ha ha lol at Meat Boy's bad breath. This all gets a bit weirder when you realise the original Meat Boy is not actually made out of edible meat, he's just a lad who happens to not have any skin. Rather than getting too upset about the whole deal, the guys at Team Meat actually praised Peter for their efforts. By posting the simple parody, the association have catapulted Super Meat Boy into the spotlight and given the game a far wider audience than the devs could have hoped for. Developer Edmund, a former vegetarian, claims to have posted on the Peter forum promoting the game in hopes that something like this would happen. But he gave up when he felt that nobody would pay attention to a game so small. Looks like it did actually pay off though, and as a sign of thanks, the character of Tofu Boy is now actually playable in Super Meat Boy once you apply the latest update via Steam. Now, at this end of the year, most of the big game announcements have already been made, and it's just a matter of waiting patiently for the days to pass until you can play the latest and greatest title. Now, though, you can add 2 more eagerly anticipated titles to your wishlist, and neither of them will break the already stretched Christmas budget. The fabulous Australian-developed Rascals just barely squeaks into 2010, scheduled to arrive on Xbox Live Arcade on December 29th. Simply hand over 800 Microsoft points and it's yours. It's actually part of Microsoft's Games for the Holidays promotion, a non-religion, non-season specific event that also features World of Keflings and Ilo Milo. If you're more into the type of game you can play when you're waiting for the train, Infinity Blade will bring the Unreal Engine to the iPhone, iPod Touch and iPad for the first time on Thursday, December 9th. It'll set you back a measly $5.99 through the App Store, and from what we've seen, it looks pretty amazing. At launch, it will only be available in single player, but we are promised that a fully functional multiplayer mode will be added later through a free downloadable update. Gaming on the iPhone and other similar gadgets got a potential boost earlier this year with the launch of Apple's Game Center, a handy way of finding out what your mates were playing and to get involved in a bit of multiplayer. Now though, through a tiny change to their terms of service, Apple have potentially upset the large portion of gamers who like to hide behind nicks, tags and other aliases. Thanks to an update pushed out earlier this week, whenever you send a friend invitation via Game Center, your real name will be attached as well as your Apple ID. At this stage, names are only displayed on the push alerts that accompany friend confirmation, but nobody's sure if that's where they'll stay or if other alerts and notifications could be included in future updates. You may remember that Blizzard tried a similar move earlier this year with the Real ID debacle, so we're surprised to see Apple going down this path. Gamers are notoriously protective of their personal details, so what will this mean for Game Center and the future of iPhone gaming? The US Air Force has just launched their latest supercomputer, the Condor Cluster. It's considered to be the fastest interactive computer in the entire Defense Department, boasting 168 separate graphical processing units and is capable of 500 trillion floating point operations per second, that's 500 T-flops, thanks to 84 coordinating servers in a parallel array. And it's made out of PlayStation 3 consoles, 1,760 of them to be precise. The decision to use hardware typically associated with gaming was actually a financial one. The entire rig could be constructed for $2 million, a mere 5 to 10% of an equivalent system made using off-the-shelf computer parts. Even better, the PlayStation rig setup only uses 1/10 of the power used by other comparable supercomputers. The Condor Cluster will be used primarily to research pattern recognition, artificial intelligence and radar enhancement, as well as scanning billions of pixels per minute as it processes ultra-high resolution satellite imagery. In case you were thinking about building one yourself, you will have to shop around a bit to find a stash of old model PS3s. This is one case where the now removed Other OS installation option is kinda crucial. On the other side of the world, the push for adult video games rating in Australia is gathering momentum with the release of a government statement this week summing up a recent research review into the effects of video games. The statement reveals that there is no conclusive evidence that violent video games have a greater impact on players than other violent media such as movies or music videos. The 50-page literature review goes on to explain that there is stronger evidence of short-term effects from playing violent games rather than long-term ones, and while some research has found that violent computer games are a small risk factor in aggressive behaviour, these studies have not thoroughly explored other factors. This is a big step forward for the Australian censorship ministers who requested the review in order to assist in making an informed decision about video games. Looks like it arrived just in time too. The Standing Committee of Attorneys General meets next week to discuss the adult rating among other issues. We'll be following the matter closely at GamePron and we'll bring you all the news as it happens. Until then, I'm Jessica Citizen and this is GamePron News.